may be. In case you're wondering if you're in the right spot, you're here for platform events versus Mixed DML. We're going to talk about how admins can use these to win the day. So a little bit about me. My name is Michelle Hansen. I currently work as a principal consultant at Slalom. I'm pretty active in the ecosystem. I co-lead a user group. I co-host Automation Hour. I'm on the Midwest Dreamin Planning Committee and have been presenting at a variety of user groups and other conferences around the ecosystem. I absolutely love being able to share my knowledge and help everyone else get where I got the hard way a little bit faster. So in the next 20 minutes or so, we are going to cover what platform events actually are. We're going to outline our use case because for me, it's always much easier to understand something when I have a real world scenario to apply it to. We're going to go through and we're going to do a quick demo, and then I'm going to leave a little bit of time at the end for us to do questions and answers, and also leave you with some additional resources. So with that, let's jump in. Okay, so what are platform events? Most of the times when we hear about them, it's something developers use, something we use to call other systems. It's a way to integrate platforms. And most of the admins I know are all like, that doesn't sound like anything I should be doing or want to do. I get it. Fortunately, there's actually some cool things that we can do with platform events that stay on platform that really help us out. So again, the definition is it's a secure and scalable message that contains data. Publishers will publish that event, and then there is a subscriber that will receive that event message in real time. Great, that was super dry. So really, it's a way for us to post a message that something happened. And when we post a message that something happened, people who care about it can be notified, and then they can go and do whatever it is they need to do because that event actually happened and we told them about it. So essentially, we can look at this with an analogy. Here's the pub sub architecture. And again, this is the technical piece. We'll look at it with an analogy here in just a minute, but you have these event producers. And so in this case, it's going to be Salesforce. So Salesforce is going to publish a platform event that has a message that we can customize. And so they will be event producers. Other systems can do this as well. And then basically everybody posts this to what's called an event bus. So an event bus, if you think about a bus in real terms, it's a large vehicle with a lot of people on it that are all trying to get to the same place. So the same thing kind of works for data. It's basically a bus where a bunch of data is collated for people to get what they need. So then once it's posted to that event bus, the event subscribers or consumers will be able to see that that message got posted and be notified about it. And then they can take that information that was in the message and go do whatever it is they need to do about it. Again, super dry, right? Didn't really help me understand this almost at all, other than it was kind of cool because we broke this apart. I don't necessarily need to call somebody and say, hey, Pavel, I just did something. And Pavel goes, cool, thanks. I needed to know about that. Maybe I don't know that Pavel needs to know. Maybe Pavel needs to know, but Mark and Vicky also want to know. Now I have to make 3 phone calls. Well, if everybody on the call wants to know, now I have to make 21 calls. That gets a little unsustainable for me to call everybody individually. So instead, if I just publish a message that all of you can subscribe to, I can say, hey, I did the thing. And you can all go, cool, that works for me. Now I can go do what I need to. So it's kind of like podcasting in the real world. Now, if we had an actual live audience and I could poll you, I would totally ask how many of you subscribe to podcasts. So if you want to throw that in the chat, feel free. But essentially, with podcasting, your content producers record their podcast and they post it. Then you, as a subscriber, will go and download that podcast or stream it from your favorite podcasting place, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you may get them. So as a content producer, I don't necessarily know who you are. I know I have a general audience that I'm trying to reach with my podcast, but I don't actually know you specifically are subscribing to my podcast. And I don't know exactly when you're going to get around to listening to it, but I do know that I've produced it I've put it out there and I've notified y'all that I have a new podcast episode. And so that is me publishing that podcast. And then I step away from the process, and it's up to you to consume that podcast later. So with platform events, we generally expect that to happen in real time instead of later. There are some ways that you can actually replay platform events after they've actually happened. If it's not actually in real time, that is beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today, but it is something that you can research if you're interested. Okay, so that's kind of what platform events are. But let's dig a little deeper. If you've ever created a custom object, trust me, you can create a platform event. So if we look through what you need to do to create a platform event, it's pretty straightforward. You enter an event label, the plural name. If it starts with a vowel sound, you're going to enter a name for the object. You're going to put in a description because we are all good Salesforce professionals that understand descriptions are important. You're going to check whether it's deployed or in development. All of this actually looks pretty familiar, right? And we can follow along with the screenshot on the side as I went through all of those different options. But oh wait, the screenshot is actually for a new custom object, not a platform event. I just wanted to be able to illustrate how similar these two things actually are. Digging a level deeper, once you've created the platform event object, you then can customize it with different custom fields. So same thing, defining a custom field needs a data type, a field label, a field name, a length, perhaps if it's a text. You need a default value. If you want to use that, you can select whether or not that should be required. And again, we'll enter a description for what that field's used for. So sounds pretty similar to custom object, right? Absolutely. It is just as easy as creating a custom object can be. Now, it's not actually a custom object, so there are a few differences. So some of those differences are that we have fewer field types. There are not pick lists. There are not page layouts that you have to actually add the fields to once you've created them. There's also not different record types. You can't split them up and say, I want these fields for this message and those fields for this other message. And a platform event does not actually create a record in Salesforce. So it's just an event that gets published and broadcast that says, hey, something happened. Here's the information that I have about this thing that happened, and I'm telling you. And so because there are no records, there's actually not any way to report on platform events, especially not through the UI. Again, there's the whole replay thing that we can talk about if we have time in the question section. But those are the major differences with platform events. And it does make it slightly tougher to test flows because you can't really trigger platform events in sort of a debugging capacity. So this is where you kind of have to take a step back toward how it used to be with Process Builder, where you actually have to test things by manually creating records or doing things with a live flow. All right, so our use case today is around automating new user creation. So our company is currently leveraging cases for all of our internal requests, and that includes requests for new users. Now, we've been very busy, we've been growing, and we have a huge increase in requests for new users. So our team has been looking for ways to streamline that process. Now, we have a rule in our org that every new user is created with the same profile, read only, in prod, until they can get through their initial Salesforce training. We want them to be able to look around, explore a little bit, maybe follow along with some other people in their department until we can get them that training, but we don't want them able to touch and break things until they know what they're actually doing. This gave us the ability to actually automate the user creation process. So that's what we decided to do. We ran into a few snags along the way, though, because there's two types of objects in Salesforce. There are data objects. Those are the standard and custom objects that we're all used to. Accounts, contacts, cases, opportunities, any of the custom objects we're creating. They hold the data that we expect our users to interact with, to update, to report on, those kinds of things. Then there's a whole other set of objects that I generally refer to as metadata or setup objects. So things like users, roles, territories, public groups. Those are all objects that contain data that control a user's access to those other objects and records in terms of what they're allowed to do, which ones they're allowed to see, and all of that. So Salesforce has this rule that because one of these types controls what you can do with the other type, you need to keep those in separate transactions. If you try and make updates to both of those objects at the same time, you'll get what's called a mixed DML error. DML being a database manipulation language. So if I'm trying to change a user's role or profile in the same transaction that I'm trying to update a case, the concern is that I will be updating a user's profile or role to restrict their access to that case record or remove their edit access to cases entirely. And so it won't necessarily know if that's allowed to go through. Like, what order should I do this in? Should I change the case and then take away their access? Should I take away their access and then not let them change the case? It's very confusing. So they just said, you can't do these things together. If you try, we're going to give you a mixed DML error. So platform events is how we decided to get around this particular challenge. So here's what we ended up building. Managers will submit us a case to request a new user. That case record comes through. That's one of those data objects. So we're going to have a record triggered flow that is an after save that uses that asynchronous path on case to create the user. Now the asynchronous path is important because what it does is it finishes the transaction that creates the case before it starts a new transaction to create the user. So we can have that dividing line, that break between our data object of case and our metadata object of user. Pretty easy so far. Can do that with just a record triggered flow. Go in, create the case, great. Well, after the user's created, what I'd really like to do is clean up and say, okay, we've automatically created the user. We should go close that case. The problem is that I don't have a second asynchronous path or any way for me really to go back across that line from metadata to data. And that's where the platform event comes in. So the platform event is the last thing that we create in our user creation flow. And it contains the information that we need about the user creation process, including the case number and whether or not it was done successfully, along with a message that I want to post to the case description. And I can contain all of that in my platform event. So then when that platform event gets published, I have a second flow that is a platform event triggered flow that updates the case again. So I'm able to start a new transaction that's event triggered to go back and touch that data object one more time. All right, so we are going to take a quick hop over into my dev org. I'm going to quickly show you the different pieces that we have here, and then we'll do a quick demo to show you that it actually works. So first things first, under setup, I've gone to platform events, and I have my custom platform event that I've built called user created or edited. So if I hop in here, you can see that there are the standard fields created by Salesforce. And the custom fields that I created, one is the message to update on the case. Number two, the record to update ID. So this is the ID of the case record that we need to close. And the status. So I did build in some error handling into this flow. So if it works, great. Perfect. We can do that. If something goes wrong, no problem. We can handle that too and pass that error over and then do something different with the case than we would otherwise. So once I've created my platform event, then I can actually go and create my flows. So I have two flows here. The first one we'll open is the actual case flow. So again, anytime a case is created, and the condition I have here is that the type is new user. So again, we're using a type field to delineate when this should fire or not. And then I'm going to run it as an after save flow for actions or related records because I'm creating a user record. And I'm going to use this run async path. So on this async path, we go through a few decisions. First, I want to make sure that I don't have an existing username. So if I do, that means I probably just need to reactivate an existing user. So I don't need to create a new one. And so again, if we go down this path, I can set an existing username message and send that to my platform event that basically tells them that there's already a user with a specified username, and I need someone to actually put their eyes on it and decide, is this the same person, or did we hire a second Mark Jones and I just cannot give them the same email address or username in Salesforce? So I'm going to move this case to an escalated status, and then I have processes to actually have people review our escalated cases as opposed to just having it close successfully. So I can set those values here. Otherwise, if I don't find an existing username, I'll go through and I have a series of checks that I do for the alias, for the nickname, and then finally I get that read-only profile ID and we create this user record. So if we successfully create the user record, then I can set a different message and status. This time, user successfully is created, and I'm going to go ahead and set the status to closed. So either way, I use a create records element to create our platform event. And so I actually select the name of my platform event as the object. I grab my 3 fields and I provide to them the variables that I set along with $record ID to give me the ID of the case that actually kicked this flow off. So once I have all 3 of those pieces of information into the platform event, it's going to publish with this create. Then once that happens, we have this platform event triggered flow. It's pretty easy to set up. You just have to tell it which platform event we're listening for, which is our user created and edited. And then I go straight into updating the case. So I use that ID that I passed over, which is now $record to update ID field. So all of this is going to use $record with the platform event as our triggering record. So I use that to locate the appropriate case record, and then I update both the description and status fields. So pretty cool, pretty simple, gets the job done right. So, all right, it is demo time. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to show you that I have myself as an active user, and then of course the integration and security users. But in my dev org, I have an available license for a user. There's only one, so I can create a new user. We built a global quick action here for a new user request. So I'm going to pop this up and very quickly provide the information that I need to create a new user. So Pavel, since you're in my audience today, I'm going to use you. Put in a first and last name. Give you a great email address, and I'm going to put you in my sales operations department. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to very quickly refresh this so that we can see our new case that just came in new status. So based on that quick action, if we come in here and we look at our details, you can see that I have the first and last name, the email, the department, the type is new user. It automatically put in a subject and a description, and you can see it's even updated already with closed and that new description from our platform event. So if we hop back over to our user screen and we do a quick refresh, we'll be able to see that I now have a second active user in my org for Pavel. And just like that, platform event went in and closed the case after we created a new user. All right, so with the last few minutes that we have remaining, I do have a lot of additional resources. Platform events are a lot more technical than what we got into today. What you can do with them is pretty interesting and flexible. So if you'd like to learn more, my buddy Champ here is trying to help. So I'll give you another minute to scan this QR code. It has a Google Sheet with all of the resources that are here. I believe we will be making the decks available as well, so all the links will be included in there also. So please correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, or anybody else on the session. But with that, I just want to say thank you, and we will open it up for questions through the chat or the Q&A panel. So Perfect. All right. I've got one Q&A from Pavel. It says, how long does the platform event live? So if I remember correctly, but don't 100% quote me on this, I believe platform events can be replayed for up to 3 days. So one of those standard fields that Salesforce gives you is a replay ID. Now, it's not as easy within code or within Flow to figure out how to replay those. It's not anything I've ever had to work with myself personally. I do know that if you're working with it in code, there is a way for you to write code that will say, I need to go back and replay certain platform events. And there is a way to grab either specifically by replay ID, or there's a few other commands that Salesforce has written in that will allow you to go back and snag that replay. So Vicky says it's 24 hours. Pretty sure it's either 24 or 3 days. I just took a class on it last week, and honestly, I probably got something mixed up. So this is why I'm giving you resources and documentation to find those definitive answers for sure. So thanks, Vicky, for the assist. I appreciate it. So any other questions out there? I know we went through the topic pretty fast, but I just kind of wanted to give you a taste of what platform events can do and a great use case for why you might want to use them. Another one that I've used it for is automatically assigning or removing people from public groups. I had a customer who wanted to automatically add their community users to a public group for sharing, so that if they were able to view their cases through a community, they would have access to do so. So it was great because they were using cases. You'd have to log a case. Someone would have to get the case. They'd have to go into setup and find their customer public group out of the thousands of customer public groups that they had. Fortunately, they had a perfect naming convention. They had a company name or ID. And so they would have that company ID as part of their group name with a standard sharing group title. And so it was very easy for us to automate. If a case came in requesting someone have access to cases, find their account, find that account number, go locate the appropriate public group and add them or remove them based on the request type. And again, fire that platform event to go ahead and close that case. We changed the turnaround time from a couple of days for someone to manage that case to about 2 minutes. So it was pretty awesome. So awesome. I'll do one last check for any questions in the Q&A panel. And I think we are good. So again, thank you for joining. Thank you to Mark and Vicky for putting on this amazing event. If you do have any questions, I absolutely invite you to reach out. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, please just let me know where we met. And I'm happy to accept those connections. But if you've got questions or want to chit chat, I'd absolutely love to hear from you. So again, thank you all for attending and enjoy the rest of the conference.